Thank you for tuning in to Koppen Comic. I'm Brian Koppen with comic Mike Pickerl. Mike Pickerl, how the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. We follow Mike Pickerl everywhere, and because you're the funniest one, you're the only one who matters in life and in comedy. You are Mike Pickerl on Twitter and Instagram.
Yes.
Good. Now, when we follow you here, you're going to post, like, I think you write satire, and you do it for a sports site. Now, do you tweet about that or no?
Yeah. Whenever it's kind of freelance, so it's only intermittently that I do it. But yeah, I think they actually just moved off their website over to Substack, but it's called End of the Bench Sports. Yeah, I write satirical sports articles and like jokes for them and stuff.
Good. Now, yeah. So tell me, I want to learn a little bit about writing satire. And so satire is like, explain satire to me, but it is basically like an onion thing where they're like, they present something as totally serious and actually they mean something totally different. And so tell me about satire. Are you particularly interested in sports satire? Or is that just the writing gig you got? And, kind of take me through your writing process, like
Sure.
in terms of how to pick it. Are you just writing headlines? Because some of these things are just like the headline's so great, and I click on it, and it's a reductress thing where it's just a fucking headline, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't care about that. I want to read the fucking article about this hilarious thing that you came up with.
Yeah. I kind of got started doing satire. Actually, it was within my first few months starting comedy. I had submitted to do like some internship, some very brief like seminar with the Onion. That was about 3 years ago now. And so it was just like this 2-day like seminar. You'd kind of like learn to write satire from them, and I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. You're presenting something that appears genuine, but it's actually false or it's imaginative. I'm just kind of a general like big Chicago sports fan. I'm a huge Bears, White Sox, Bulls fan.
You missed a couple. Is that is that because you like the Sox and not the Cubs and maybe hockey sucks?
No, I actually, most of my family are big hockey fans. I like the Blackhawks. I don't watch hockey as much until the playoffs.
Yes, because it sucks to watch. Like it's like soccer. Like I think I some stand-up comedian or some comedian just talked about that. He's like, hockey, it's like the announcer is always surprised when there's a goal, and a sport should not be like that.
Correct. Yeah. No. And yeah, it's true. I can never really tell what's going on until like if there weren't a siren when the goals went off, I would have no idea what happened the entire time.
It's like, what happened there? I don't know. I saw a puck going in net, but what's that have to do with anything?
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I mean, I think that's your measure of like how much you like or dislike a sport. Like if your hometown, like how far does your hometown team have to get in the bracket for you to be interested? Like me, for like the Bulls back in the day, I could watch the whole season, it's fine.
Yeah.
Or like the Cubs, you're like, well, because my family watches it, I'll go ahead and maybe turn on a playoff game or whatever.
Right.
But if the hockey, Blackhawks winning the fucking winning the Stanley Cup or whatever the fuck, I'm not even gonna watch that. And so like, yeah, what's kind of in terms of what is your favorite sport? I mean, is it, you mentioned Bears first? Is that to say you're a football guy?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you play?
No, not at all. I am the least coordinated, most unathletic person you would ever meet.
You have to be coordinated and athletic to play football?
Well, or that have some serious brain damage.
Oh no, yeah, that would not help with comedy. Actually, it could be unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah. The unaware comic. Yeah,
because you're like, oh, we need you to write satire, and you just write like things that you think are actual headlines, and they're like, yes, this is hilarious. Like,
yeah.
Oh, it's just because he has brain damage. Oh, yeah. It's all very sad. Like so, for example, the recent DeMar thing, where DeMar or something or other on the Bills, a safety on the Bills collapsed because he was hit directly, and he was hit it with such perfect timing on the heart that they're like, yeah, man, if you hit a heart at exactly that part of its rhythm, it will fucking stop. Yeah. And so like, as far as writing satire about that, is that something you would ever do? Or is there something that's even too, the whole too soon thing? Is there, I mean, normally you don't come to that with sports because normally people aren't collapsing on a field, but like, are you a risk taker? Could you even write a satiric article about that?
Sure. Yeah,
You're like,
yeah, totally.
yeah, man, I already did.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I guess nothing's really off limits. I mean, I'm not a particularly like edgy guy or edgy comic by any means. Most of my stuff comes through imagination, but like if you've got a joke there, it's worth writing about, because like ultimately when you're writing satire, you're poking holes in generally accepted societal norms and stuff. And the societal norm with that is, well, it's okay for people to play football, when in reality, like, I watch football, I partake in, all that stuff. But at the same time, like, if you're writing satire about it, you're just proving it's not safe. I mean, The Onion had a great, I think it was The Onion who had an article about it just the other day.
about tomorrow.
It was either, I can't remember if it was The Onion or End of the Bench. They had something about the football revenues coming before the players. And it's like, yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah. Cause it's almost like, it's one of those jokes where you're like, people can get upset about it, but you're like, it's not actually a DeMar joke. It's actually a football greedy joke or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think there's that big comedian, I forgot, Ari Shafir. Yeah. So after Kobe and his daughter died or whatever, like he was making jokes that second. And and somebody and one comedian who was on my thing was like, yeah, dude, like if I see a comedian, like I love Kobe so much that if I see a comedian, even though somebody I know in my feed joking about it, like I will block that person. And I'm just like, yeah, you're right. Like if you love somebody so much, like you can fucking just kind of take it really seriously and stuff. And it's like once the daughter gets involved, I don't envy any comedian trying to make that funny. Because even if you're like, well, Kobe's a rapist, blah blah blah, you're just like, his daughter was in the fucking helicopter or whatever. That's just like I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But like you said, some edgelords, that's where they live.
Yeah, and
that's go there.
That's a little bit. I'm not a big fan of provocateurs in general, and I did find that. I mean, maybe I'm being a huge hypocrite here, but I did find that a little bit different in that it was more a personal tragedy than it was a statement about basketball.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't feel like it's as ripe for satire as were it to be like an injury on the court or.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
something
so
like that.
That begs the question. Like you said, like because it's NFL, there's a lot of things to tease, right?
Yeah.
Just rub some dirt on it. NFL coach says that's probably something that somebody could write. But
absolutely,
is that a topic? Is somebody is death of a beloved figure? I suppose there's angles in which to do it, but the Kobe one is particularly tricky, right?
Yeah, it's always going to be harder. And I mean, you see, like with writing satire in general, and especially with something that was that unexpected and tragic, you have to ignore your first 2 or 3 takes on whatever that is going to be. Kobe doesn't pass. How could Kobe pass? It's just like, you and every other person has already thought of that. You really have to dig deep and do something clever. And I mean, like, that's true with comedy in general, but I feel like especially true for writing satire.
Well, that's actually, I mean, like, no, so that, I haven't even heard that one. So I have a whole lot of timeline full of, former comedians who've been on.
Sure.
Kobe doesn't pass is almost okay. Cause you're almost telling Kobe not to pass. Like, don't fucking die, man. Like,
right. But I
thought Kobe doesn't pass, man. Come on, bro. Like, yeah, but you're right. Like, generally speaking, no. If there's parallel thought, is because everybody's rocking the first, second, and third jokes.
Exactly.
And that's, I guess, like, so there's angles at which to take it, but I almost think you take the opposite angle and just kind of make fun of the edgelords whose careers are gonna fucking die. Careers of edgelords also die along with Kobe, like, meaning like,
yeah,
you can, and that would not be a Kobe joke in that situation. It would be
exactly
the difficulty of writing a joke. And so as far as like writing satire and stuff, and I kind of interrupted your career progression, but just like, can you write satire for anything? Like, is sports necessarily have to be involved, or can you just write sports for anything? Can you write satire for anything?
I feel like now I probably could. Sports is just my preferred medium because for me, like, there's so much humor in like sports fans in particular. Like, there's so much humor in caring about something so deeply that means absolutely nothing.
I think Seinfeld had that joke. He's like, a minute before you were rooting against the guy, now you're rooting for him just because he got traded. you're booing the close at this point. Boo!
Yeah.
Close. I don't know if that was Seinfeld, but I mean I don't love Seinfeld jokes too much, but that was one where I thought it was Seinfeld, and I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just so ripe for parody, like with how seriously people take. I mean, there's a whole billion-dollar industry around just talking about sports. Like that's so absurd to me. Like, and I love sports, but like the idea that like there's talking heads on TV just breaking down like stuff is just so absurd that it's like hard. It's almost hard not to write about it.
Yeah, because they're doing it in such a serious way a lot of the time.
Exactly.
But then Oberman used to do that shit, and you're like, he's Oberman. He's like one of the most serious dudes ever.
Yeah.
And so not to do it with a comedy take would just be ridiculous. But like, and I think whatever you're right though. Comedy is so broad and satire is so broad that it can be written about anything. And so to be able to have a vertical, like a sports versus whatever, like it's everybody can feast at the trough of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
You might as well split it up into little silos like sports, because then those fans will gravitate to you, etc. Like if I did that sort of thing, like I was thinking about doing it, but it would be in music. And so music is another kind of vertical where those people know dick about sports, right? Sports people know dick about music. So why would you try to branch out and do everything? But I mean, and I guess I was bad mouthing like Babylon Bee the other day because I thought I didn't even understand a Ocasio-Cortez reference that they had. But then since then, I've read a lot of good headlines of theirs. I'm just like, if you're good at this shit, like The Onion or maybe Babylon Bee, I don't know if they're good or not. I'm just kind of, they're coming on my radar because they just got let back on Twitter, I thought. Yeah. But just like, if you're good enough, you really can take anything from any angle as long as you're funny.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, not to just agree, but yeah, it's
far be it to me to agree with a podcaster, but yeah, you're like, I was pretty blunt and direct there. Qualify a little bit.
But yeah, as long as you're finding a unique and interesting angle. So like to kind of go back to the stuff I'm doing for End of the Bench, like for them in particular, they have every Friday they'll produce a show called like Short Sports that you can find on Instagram and YouTube, where they just kind of do like one-liner jokes about like sports events throughout the week, and then throughout the week they'll post like articles of stuff. So it's not just headlines.
Good.
It's like a full, and then you write out the headline and then the full article as well.
Thank God. And so like how much do you have to pay attention to, how much do you have to, if you're writing those one-liners for the weekly show or whatever, how much are you having to pay attention to sports generally? Because you probably can't just watch a Bears game and get all you need. You need to kind of watch Channel 7. Right? It used to be Mark Giangreco, right? Yeah. So he said something inappropriate and got canceled, which is fun.
Yeah, that brings me back. Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm an old dude. I'm from Chicago. Like, we grew up with the Chicago media. Actually, like I lived in Chicago for, I don't know, a decade or so. But we were raised in Joliet, so we still had the Chicago media presence. So we still love the Bulls, and we still, got a Jim Rose or Mark Giangreco. We were Channel 7 family, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't, but if you were cool, you were watching Channel 7.
Yeah,
so,
no, definitely.
Do you feel that you have to at least watch the local highlights to be able to write enough one-liners to get enough of them into that weekly show for End of the Bench Sports?
Yeah, well, with how popular sports is, and it's so often in the zeitgeist that like you can just go to the gym and like while I'm like running on a treadmill or something, they'll have something on TV, and just like even the stuff scrolling along the bottom screen, I'll just come up with an idea for something like that. Or just like, you can do just kind of even the most basic research can lead you to something really imaginative. I mean, the last article I had published for them was something to the effect of like it was when TNT announced that the Inside the NBA guys got a new deal. And so the article I had wrote for them was that Inside the NBA announces a new deal for Charles Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny, and what's the other guy's name, to guard the gates of hell. So then I wrote a whole article about them, like what it would be like for like the Inside the NBA crew to like actually be guarding the gates of hell.
Oh, that's hilarious. Get that shit out of there, blocking a shot like they're keeping side out of hell.
Exactly.
That's cool. So you really are able to kind of scratch that imaginative itch.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I find like, that's kind of there's a lot of room for imagination in satire. Like just biting social commentary, I feel like if you're just constantly bombarded with that, it can get kind of like odious a little bit.
But also, that's like the Babylon Bee thing. I think some of the stuff that's kind of turned me back around is the fact that some of it was actually, not a politics joke. It was more just kind of a flight of whimsy or being imaginative or whatever.
Exactly.
So that's cool that's kind of where you live, because that stuff's more likely to be picked up, I would think.
Yeah, it's just trying to like find stuff from a different angle. I mean, there's always room for like, biting social commentary, but then, you also have to have room for like a lighter or like a different angle on a piece, or like something that's just completely out of the blue,
Yeah, because I almost think the social justice angle might be the equivalent of a first or second joke, like with certain figures, with certain sports figures anyway. You're like, if there's a boxer who's been, a domestic abuser as well, I think your first 10 jokes about I don't know what the fuck that that guy's name is, but Mayweather or whoever. Your first 10 jokes are going to be domestic abuse. It's like your 11th one, man. It's like, man, you got to be pretty creative to get a non-domestic abuse joke about Floyd Mayweather that are as popular as some of the ones that are about domestic abuse or whatever. I don't know if that made sense, but like, how competitive is it? Like end of the bench or otherwise? Like, how many are you submitting? How many are getting published? Are you able to kind of any rejects, are you able to kind of retool and submit under a different sports player's name? Like, meaning like, I wrote this about Floyd Mayweather, it didn't really work. Let me now do it about Pacquiao or something. And is there alternative outlets that you're turning to with some of your rejected material?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, like I'm actually kind of in the past week, I've just been kind of seeing about, because there's actually a ton of different like not just sports, but like satire websites. End of the Bench is the one I've worked with most commonly. But like the Onion is like hyper competitive. I don't know if they're accepting external submissions right now. They have like a team of writers and all that stuff, and they will have some comics write for them as well. But the stuff I'm writing for End of the Bench, it is somewhat competitive, but the thing I like about it is that it's a really welcoming atmosphere.
Okay.
And they're good about publishing like good quality stuff. Like they'll reject an article if they think it's not good enough. Sometimes they'll let you retool it, but also like you were saying, a lot of the time, like if something's just not good enough, I don't want to just like recycle it and change the name necessarily. Like usually I'm just like, you know what? This was a first take. I need to scrap it and like move on to something else, because I'm more likely to have a better take. And, it just makes you a better writer, I think, too. Like, yeah, you should learn to edit and like take your tools, but also learn when to just like call it quits. Because like you were saying, when it comes to like those first 10 jokes, like sometimes you just have to write those just to get them out of your head.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because if you're hanging on, if you're thinking about it but not writing it down, it's something that it's you're hanging on to it, and it's just fucking baggage. Like you said, like, let's get it out so it doesn't sit in the front of my brain or the back of my brain. Let's at least push it to the back of my brain or out of the brain entirely, so that some other cool shit can percolate in the front of the brain. And I guess that's like, it's also an opportunity to see what you're bad at. And so if you find out a lot of things are getting rejected by all publications, not just any.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you're like, oh shit, maybe I'm just not good at the social justice angle.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be the last joke I try to write, because I should stop kind of wasting my time on a certain thing when I'm so great at being absurdist or imaginative or whatever. And you could always like try to build up that muscle later, but just like, no, man, like I enjoy being fucking absurd, and it seems to work. So let me spend 90% of my time doing that, and then I'll try to get better with the social justice thing at some other time.
Exactly. And you don't have to like be good at everything, like there's some people that are like utility guys, but
where they're pretty good at a lot of things, and not really good at anything.
But like so much of comedy, exactly. And so much of comedy is just about being your most authentic self. And that's when you're at your funniest. So like for me, like I'm a weird dude, and I think and say weird things. So like, yeah, being absurdist with my sports satire, or just satire in general, if I'm writing that, or just my comedy stand-up, like, yeah, it's just gonna be better if I'm weird, because that's who I am.
And I love that they'll start to expect, they'll give you the column. The Mike Pickerl column where he's just fucking, he said strange ass shit, and that'll be
Yeah.
the name of the column, because people begin to expect it. They're like, I see this kind of event happening in sports. I really think Mike Pickerl is going to have a crazy take on it. Let me read that particular like Substack.
Exactly.
Have you thought about doing your own Substack on this stuff yet?
No, I like kind of working with like other people just so I can see their angles and stuff too.
Yeah. It's
So
good for development, right? To be in kind of a writer's room.
it's good for development. Yeah, I mean, like, we actually only recently connected. All of us had like a Zoom call, the end of the bench writers, recently. Even though it's like kind of freelance and anybody can submit. The ones of us, there are some of us who submit the most often and like have higher publishing rates. So we kind of all got together and had like kind of like a little writers room thing, and it was a lot of fun. You
And
know,
someday
like,
you'll get a massive contract to guard the gates of hell, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what we're looking for.
Well, I saw that end of the bench, end of the bench sports. That's end of bench on Twitter. That kind of tweeted that out, and
Yeah,
of course tagged you, but then you retweeted it, and so now I can retweet it
great.
right now, because and you can find all that funny shit, because I love that. Just picturing those fucking Charles and Shaq,
Yeah.
at least. I mean Kenny too, and the other guy. I loved how you called him the other guy. I thought that was the headline. The other guy.
Yeah.
But like, to see them guarding the gates of hell is amazing. But we find all this funny stuff at Mike Pickerel on both Twitter and Instagram, and you'll find very quickly, because he says strange shit, that he has those names because he's the only one who matters. Mike Pickerel, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.